Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be answering a booty ton of questions about applying to nursing school, my whole experience applying, my whole experience testing, literally everything. You guys sent a lot of questions from both future Aggie nurses and some of my YouTube subscribers, so I'm really excited. I'm answering every single one of them, and yeah, let's get started. So the first questions I'm going to answer are questions related to testing. So the first one I got was, how long before the application deadline should you take the entrance exams required? So I took the entrance exams before the application opened. So I took my TEAS test on January 25th and then the application opened on February 1st. This is not something that you have to do. Some people take their sorry, there's thunder in the background. So if you hear thunder, I'm sorry. So I'm editing this video right now and I realized that there is mascara on my hand the entire video because I guess I like rubbed my eye or something, so please ignore that. It is driving me crazy and yeah, I'm sorry about it. Some people take their tests later in the application cycle. I personally decided to take it at the very beginning of the application cycle instead of at the end, just because if I did poorly, I wanted enough time to be able to study and then take it again. And there's also some rules on like how long you have to wait between tests and stuff, so I wanted to make sure that I had more than enough time to take it again if necessary. What resources helped you best studying? So I actually did a whole video on my TEAS test experience and it's up in the iCard. If you want to watch it after this video, I'll also put it in the description down below. But I used a bunch of different passages from this one book, which is linked in the description of that video. So if you click on that video and scroll down, I have all of the links to everything I used. But to sum it up, basically I used Crash Course, then this one textbook that had some practice questions in the back, and I also used a bunch of YouTubers that make free videos, so I also linked all of their channels in that description. So check out that video if you want advice on that. Goodness gracious. Okay. Some schools that I'm applying to require the TEAS, but I had always planned on studying for taking the HESI. Is some of the material similar, or do I need to be studying for two different tests? Okay, so the TEAS and the HESI, I got a lot of questions about this. I did not take the HESI, but I do know that the HESI is a little easier than the TEAS, but they're very similar in content. The TEAS will go a little bit deeper into your like anatomies and biology, so the science section on the TEAS versus the science section on the HESI are like a pretty big game changer. But to my understanding, the HESI is an easier exam, so if you're taking both, study for the HESI for sure, but studying for the TEAS will definitely help you on the HESI. So that's just my advice there. I never had to take the HESI, but I know a lot of people who did, and that is basically the summary of what I've been told. How long does it take to get your results? I got my results right after I took the test, so once you click out of the test, it like goes through a whole loading page and then your results show up, and my proctor was like, okay great, you can leave, and I didn't get to see the actual like breakdown of my score until I left the room. Then at the very front there's like a printer person, like a lobby lady, and she will print out your score sheet and give it to you, and then it'll also be available on your ATI website, and that's going to be the form that you send to your nursing school if you didn't send it before the test. So yeah, it's instant, which is kind of scary, and that loading thing is terrifying, but yeah. For my TEAS score, I just pulled out my scores. So I got a 92 overall. It was a 92.0%, so exactly a 92. Reading, I got an 85.1%. That was my lowest score, and it was actually like kind of surprising because I'm pretty good at English and reading, but for some reason they were my lowest scores on the TEAS. So if you're in that boat with me, make sure that you still study really hard for those sections because they're not easy. For English and language usage, I got an 87.5%. That section I also found more challenging than I thought it would be. I used to be really involved in like creative writing and spelling bees and the works, and I still felt like that section was difficult, so definitely study really hard for those two. Do not underestimate. For science, I scored a 91.5%, and for math I got a 100%. And for math, I am not really generally good at math, but I studied by doing a lot of practice questions. All of my tips for each of these sections is all in my TEAS video, so go check out my TEAS video. If you haven't started studying for your TEAS, you can watch that video now or wait and watch it later, but I broke down every single component of this. I did not share my scores, however, in that video, so these are my scores. Now you can go and apply those to that video. And then this did give us the national averages for each section. So the national mean for the TEAS in general is a 65.6. For reading, it's a 72.4. Math is a 68.6. Science is a 57.2. And English is a 66.3. So I would try to be above average always, because that is how you can definitely make yourself stand out. Can you retake the exam? Yes, you can retake the exam. Just make sure that you look at the programs that you're applying to, because some of them have limits on how many times you can retake it, or how many times you can take it within an application cycle, or how many times you could take it in a lifetime. So just make sure that you're checking on your programs before you decide to retake it. All right, so those are my main testing questions. The next questions were basically mostly prerequisite type questions. What was the hardest science you took, and what advice do you have now after taking it? So for me, this is different for everybody, but for me, the hardest science I took was chemistry. I have never really been the best at chemistry. I've been really good at biology, and some people are the other way around. So it just really depends on your skill level. Some advice for chemistry though is SI sessions and IA sessions. Those are both available at A&M. If you don't go to A&M, Khan Academy videos also help a lot, and just anything that you can find on YouTube. YouTube is a really good resource for crash course style videos, so definitely utilize the internet. They have a lot of breakdowns that make things a lot simpler than maybe your chemistry professor sounds. But this is specifically an A&M question. Did you do the 2+2 Bachelor's of Nursing pathway, or did you get an undergraduate degree and apply to nursing school? So I'm graduating from A&M with an allied health degree this December, and then going to nursing school in January. So I did 4 years of college and then nursing school. These are general application questions, and there's a butt ton of these, so hopefully these help you guys. How do you stand out in your application? So this is something that I was actually asking at one of the informationals that I went to. A lot of people who apply to nursing school have very high GPAs and very high test scores, so you can't only have good test scores and a good GPA. Having work experience or having little licenses and certifications will help you a lot. One thing that I definitely recommend is getting your BLS certificate, your basic life support, which is CPR, first aid, that realm. It's really easy to get, and it helps you a lot on your application, and it'll help your community if someone randomly needs CPR or first aid. So I would definitely recommend having that and making sure that it's up to date when you apply, because that's something so easy that you can have that stands out on your application. And any other health related certifications that you can get, especially those opioid ones, those ones are good. Just, it stands out, it's different, and it helps a lot of people. So I would try to get certifications if you can. This question says, I'm actually a freshman, so what are some things I should be doing or looking into prior to applying, and what would be some good opportunities to get involved in to put on my application when it comes time? So freshman year is kind of confusing because you have no idea, you just got to college and now everyone's trying to tell you how to apply to nursing school. So I feel that that's a very stressful time. But some really good things that you can be doing as a freshman is just educating yourself on what the requirements for programs are. So what I did my freshman year is I went through a bunch of programs, probably 15 or 20 programs, and I printed out their prerequisites and any random things that I can find, their admitted student statistics and stuff like that, and I kept them all in a binder so that I could go through it every year, just kind of see where I stand. I was more able to see what I need to be doing in the future instead of trying to figure that all out in the end. So just try to educate yourself, and going to meetings like Future Aggie Nurses at A&M is a really good idea, because you'll learn about a lot of programs and not just Texas A&M. All right, the next question. Howdy, I am a current sophomore, and I was wondering if there is anything you wish you knew your sophomore year. What needs to be completed by sophomore year? Thanks. So sophomore year, also similar to freshman year, I just recommend getting a good grip of everything that you're going to need to do, especially because your junior and senior year is when you start actually having to apply. Unless you're doing 2+2, then you're going to want to do this at the end of your freshman year. But sophomore year is when I started deciding where I was going to go visit and start to look at, because I could get a better idea of what my GPA was and where competitively I would stand among nursing programs. So the summer after my sophomore year, I went on all the nursing school tours, and all the nursing school tours will also be linked in my bio, so if you want to watch those videos, you can. That is just something that helped me a lot, get an idea of what kind of environment I'd be walking into, or I would want to be walking into. Did you do any certifications that helped the transition into nursing school a little bit easier? So I'm not in nursing school yet, so I don't know about the whole transition process, but the certifications that I do hold are suicide gatekeeper certification, CPR, first aid, the basic ones like that. So nothing like crazy that I know of, but that's what was on my application. And I've been told that a BLS license helps a lot. I know that it's a very common thing to get, but I've been told it helps, so I would do that. How long did it take you to apply to each program? So I only applied to one program, and I was going to apply to other programs, so I'll explain that in some of my later questions. But it took me probably a total of like 3 or 4 weeks to do all of it, because there's so many different steps. Like first you send your test scores and your transcripts, you fill out the nursing CAS application, you have to wait for that to be verified. Once that's verified, sometimes the school will send you a supplemental application like UTMB does. And yeah, so the entire process probably took about 4 weeks, and I started that the day that the application opened, so it could end up being longer if you wait when it's like more common to apply. So I would try to do it as early as possible so that you don't mess that up, because sometimes that process can be really stressful. How long did you wait to hear back from nursing schools? So this question is a little bit different for me than it will be probably for y'all. So I obviously applied during COVID, and I don't know when this is going to end, but I applied February 1st and I heard back August 18th. So a long time. But most people won't have to wait that long. Like some of my friends applied like January, December, and then they heard back in March, and it was like more like a 3-month thing. So it really depends on your program when they send stuff out, and obviously circumstances of the world right now do not really help the situation. So I waited a long time. Hopefully you guys won't have to wait that long, because that was a difficult wait. If doing the accelerated program, how long would you say before you graduate should you start applying to nursing school? So I applied to nursing school in late January, early February, and I graduate in December, so I did a year. It kind of depends on the semester that you're planning on entering. So if you're planning on entering next fall, you would probably be applying later this year towards like December or January. And if you're applying for next summer, you're probably applying right now. So it depends on your program and their deadlines, so make sure that you keep up with deadlines. All the deadlines are different for every program, so don't just count on one deadline. What are the main things I should do to ensure I get into the program? So this one's kind of a rough question to answer, because there's really nothing you can do to automatically be accepted into the program unless you go to one of those schools that has like an automatic thing, but at A&M we don't have that. So I would honestly make sure that your GPA is a good GPA, which I know is kind of hard to say and easier said than done, but I would make sure that your GPA is solid and that you tried your best. And for your test scores, that you're actually studying for your HESI and studying for your TEAS, because that score can either really help you or really hurt you. So make sure that you are really studying for that. And then if worse comes to worse and you have a really low test score and you have a really low GPA, a lot of schools will have personal statements, and make sure that you have something to say in your personal statement to either defend why you didn't do so great. Especially something like on your testing, if English is not your first language, that could be something that you want to mention in your personal statement to make up for your test score being lower. Whatever it is, make sure that you include that in your personal statement. But there's really nothing you can do to make sure that you will for sure get into nursing school. Are early submissions more likely to get into the program over someone who submitted close to the deadline? So that question also depends on your program. So I asked that question to a couple schools. Most schools recommended getting it in early, just because it gives them time to like go through the applications and actually like read through everything and get a good idea of who you are as an applicant. But I do know that some programs don't even open the applications until a certain date. So it really depends. That's something that you want to ask the admissions person. What are good things to get involved in that is good on a resume? Congrats, by the way, getting into nursing school is such an amazing accomplishment, and this is so sweet for you to do this. Aw, thank you. And so this organization, Future Aggie Nurses, is a good organization to get involved in. It looks good on a resume. You get a good idea of all the nursing programs in Texas. If you don't go to Texas A&M and you're looking for programs to get involved in, anything that is like service related that will make sure you're doing community service and finding something you're passionate about is good for your resume. Also, it doesn't even have to be academic, nursing related, or even health related at all. If you are just really passionate about something and it's beneficial to the community, you should definitely participate in that and write about it in your application, because something that they definitely want to see is that you're passionate about what you do, so they know that you're passionate about anything in life and passionate about becoming a nurse. So anything that you really love and care about is something you should put on your resume and get involved in. Will a satisfactory S grade on a prerequisite affect our chances to get into nursing school from spring 2020? And if so, how do you recommend we address it on our application? So most nursing schools, I actually haven't seen any that will not take a pass-fail grade for spring 2020 specifically. So if you took pass-fail over the summer or took it right now, that I think depends on the program. But as far as spring 2020, to my understanding, most programs were accepting of that, but I would make sure that you double check that with whatever program you're applying to. I know that the circumstances of that semester were really awkward, so I know a lot of nursing schools are going to accept it, but just make sure that you don't count on that for the rest of the semesters during COVID, and that you ask that whenever you apply to the program. Which, if any, classes did you take at Blinn? Hard sciences, etc. So I did my first year and my first summer at Blinn. The prerequisite classes that I took at Blinn were lifespan psychology, because the one at A&M does not transfer as the same one as Psych 2314 does, Texas Common Course number. So I would take that one out of community college, if not Blinn anywhere, but the one at A&M is not the same. It doesn't transfer anywhere besides A&M's nursing school. So I took that one at Blinn. I also took Biology 1 at Blinn, which was not a nursing prerequisite for UTMB. It was actually my nursing elective for UTMB, but I took that at Blinn. And I took Anatomy 2 at Blinn. I think those are the only sciences. I also took general psychology there, and then like my random classes like history and government and stuff. And then as far as hard sciences at A&M, I've taken chemistry, Anatomy 1, microbiology, nutrition. I'm blanking, but the rest of them I took at A&M. Did you apply to the TAMU nursing school? I did not apply to A&M's nursing school. I looked into applying to A&M's nursing school, but since I got into UTMB, it was my top choice, and I decided not to apply to A&M. Some nursing schools require some specific prerequisites, while others don't have the same prereqs. How do you go about that if you are applying to multiple nursing schools? So this is why I said for the freshman question that I recommend printing out all of those requirements, because if you go through and highlight them, you can see where they overlap and you can see the classes that you're going to take. So for example, philosophy was like, there's like an ethics version and then like just like a general philosophy version, and some programs wanted a philosophy ethics course and some didn't care, so I made sure to take the ethics one because it applied to more programs. So that's just something that really helps you figure out which ones you can take. I had the prerequisites to apply to all of the programs that I toured, so you should be okay, but highlighting those will definitely clear it up a little bit. If I got a 78 or 79 on the TEAS test and have a high GPA, do you think I have a good chance of getting in? I'm hoping to apply for the fall of 2021. So that also depends on the program that you're applying to. I know UTMB's competitive TEAS score, I think, was a 70. I know that you have to get a certain score in each section though, so if your score is like a 75 but you got 100 on one and a 50 on the other, that's not going to work because you have to make sure every category is above that competitive score or the required threshold. So it depends on the breakdown of your score, but a high GPA is always a good thing, so that will definitely help you. Just make sure that all of the categories on your TEAS score are within the correct range, and hopefully you'll be good to go. I know for my program, I asked in my group chat like of accepted students what their TEAS scores were, and most of them were around an 85-ish and above, but those are also the people who got in on the first wave, so there's still a bunch of people who are going to get in later, so I don't really know what scores they're going to have. And some of those people had much lower scores and high GPAs, and it fluctuated, and it also depended on their personal statement and life experience. So that is not like a one-size-fits-all thing, but that was generally the average that I've been told. And I'm not an admissions counselor, so I don't know the exact averages of admitted students. Did you apply through Nursing CAS? Yes, I did. You have to apply through Nursing CAS for most programs, so definitely become familiar with that. It is a little confusing at first, but I did apply through Nursing CAS. What places did you apply to that have some similar requirements to A&M? So like I said, I did not apply to other programs, but some schools that have similar requirements are UTMB, Texas Women's, UT Health, Baylor, I think Texas State, SFA. I know Texas Tech also is in there. There's some that require a pathophysiology course, so you may have to take that at a community college. And for UT Health Science Center San Antonio, they require chemistry too, so that's something that you'll also have to take. But for the most part, they're generally the same. They just have one kind of little loophole they want you to jump through for their program specifically. All of the vlogs that I made while visiting nursing schools are linked down below, and for all of those ones, they're very similar to A&M, so you should definitely check those videos out. In order, what did you prepare for your application? So in early November, I started studying for my TEAS. In December, over winter break, I was like cramming hard, studying really hard for my TEAS, and I also started working on my personal statement. I actually wish I started my personal statement a little bit earlier. I am a good writer, so I felt confident about my personal statement, but if you are not a good writer, you should start it way earlier than that and utilize things like University Writing Center or any writing applications or writing tutoring that you can, because that's something that can look really good on your application or make you look not so good. So I started that in December. I probably should have started it earlier, but I took it to the University Writing Center twice, and I also like sent it to a bunch of people, and I worked really hard on it. So that is when I started my personal statement. I took my TEAS at the end of January 25th to be exact, and then I applied for nursing school on February 1st. So that is the order in which I prepared my application. What should you prepare before the application opens to apply for nursing school? So this one is totally up to you, but for me, I wanted to have my personal statement done, and I wanted to have my TEAS test taken so that if I needed to retake it, I would have time, or if I needed to change my personal statement, I would have time. That's how I did it. Totally up to you if you want to wait. I just recommend having it done early. It saves a lot of stress. So that is what I did. How did you look for shadowing opportunities, and when did you start looking, and when did you start shadowing? So I did not shadow anybody. I know you can. I guess I did a home health internship, so I kind of shadowed within that, but it was paid, so it wasn't like a volunteer type thing. Shadowing helps. It's not required. I didn't do it. Most of my friends that got into nursing school didn't do it, but they did work in some kind of thing that required health, whether it was a BLS certification or being a caregiver for the elderly, things like that, but I did not shadow specifically. Also, within the home health internship, I was with a nurse, so I kind of shadowed, but I was also helping her, so it really depends, but I did not shadow personally. Rude. But these questions are about getting into my program / choosing my program. So what are some things you looked for in the programs at the nursing schools you applied to? So something I was looking for was access to clinicals. So I know some schools, including A&M, you have to drive a decent amount to get to your clinicals because we're in a small isolated area in College Station. So I wanted to be a little bit closer to the hospitals I was going to be at. So for UTMB, there was going to be a drive between Houston, Galveston, and like the area in between all those little cities. But they were a lot closer than some of the ones that I heard at other programs. So that was one thing I looked for. I also wanted to do an accelerated program because I'm graduating, so I wanted nursing school to just go by. So I was also looking for a program that was gonna go through the summer and just be a one and done quick type thing. If you want to have summers off, that's something you might want to look for. It was something I didn't want, but that's a perk to some people. Something I also looked for, well, I wasn't looking for it necessarily, but I was interested at UTMB. Their clinicals start early instead of doing like just classes and then clinicals later. It was kind of like more integrated. So I really liked that about UTMB. But there's a lot of different things, and some of them are pros and cons depending on your learning style and your preferences, and a lot of programs have different styles, so it's definitely worth checking out a bunch of programs so you can decide what feels more your fit. Was the application process for each school generally the same? So I only applied to UTMB, but they're generally the same style. There's always going to be one little loophole of some sort that you have to jump through for each program though. So for UTMB, they did send a supplemental application. For UT Health, there's no personal statement. For UT Health Science Center San Antonio, you have to take Chem 2. For Texas Tech, you have to do an interview, and I think you have to have your CNA license. So, oh, that's another certification that I would recommend. I recommend getting your CNA certification if you want to do that. I personally did not do that, but I wanted to. I just didn't have time with my job. But if you don't have a job right now, that's definitely something that you should definitely take advantage of. So, CNA licenses for sure. Also, being a CNA allows you to like kind of get an idea of what being a nurse is like, and you'll get to see what nurses are doing and see if that's something that you even want to do in the first place. These next ones are kind of like about my stats as an applicant, so I'm sure this is probably something that everyone wants to know, and it's probably the juicy detail about everyone, so I'll just be an open book. Feel free to ask me any questions and I'll answer them. Did you have a lot of volunteer hours, extracurricular activities, work experience in a hospital setting, etc.? So the first category, volunteer hours, I had volunteer hours. I didn't have a whole lot. I did Camp Kesem at Texas A&M, which is a summer camp for children whose parents have cancer or have had cancer or passed away from cancer, and I was just a camp counselor for them for a week of last summer and then 2 weeks of this past summer. I also did all of the Future Aggie Nurses volunteer stuff. So this past school year, August 2019 through May 2020, I was the volunteer chair for Future Aggie Nurses. So I was in charge of facilitating all of the service type things for all of the members. So I was at all of those. So I got a lot of service hours doing that, and also encouraging other people to get service hours. So that was my volunteer experience. It wasn't like anything crazy. I wasn't like spending 30 hours a week volunteering, but I did have a decent amount. Extracurricular activities that I did. My freshman year, I did John 15, which is a freshman like Christian Catholic group. So it really wasn't anything nursing related, but I was involved in that. My sophomore year, I did Future Aggie Nurses as a member. I became active that spring, and I did Camp Kesem. My junior year, I was in a Bible study. I did Camp Kesem again. I was the Future Aggie Nurses volunteer chair. Oh, and I volunteered on Aggie Awakening at St. Mary's Catholic Center. My work experience in a hospital setting. So I didn't have work experience in a hospital setting at all. My freshman and my sophomore year, I worked at Callaway House as a community assistant. My sophomore year, I was the senior community assistant. I was an RA for all of my junior year. I just quit because of the pandemic starting my senior semester. And in between each of those, my first summer, I did Callaway House in between my freshman and sophomore year. I was still there. My sophomore to my junior year, I did a home health internship, and then my junior year to my senior year was when all this COVID stuff happened, so that's when I started making videos for you guys. What was your GPA? My GPA was a 3.82. What was your major? My major is allied health right now, and I'm graduating in December. How long did it take you to do your prerequisites? So this question is kind of iffy because I could have done my prerequisites in 2 years, but because I knew I was going to wait until after graduating to apply to nursing school, I spread them all out all the way through until I graduated. So you can do them in 2 years or less than 2 years if you want to do them in like 3 semesters. I know some people can pull that off, but I spread them out over my 3.5 years because I'm graduating a semester early. So that is all of the questions that I have on here. So that is all I have for you guys. If you have any more questions, feel free to comment them down below. I will respond to your comments and answer all of your questions. If you would like me to do any videos elaborating on these topics, feel free to comment that down below and I will definitely elaborate on these topics. I also have a whole playlist if you want to check it out. It's called Nursing School. It is on my channel. I posted in my playlist all of the tours that I went on, so you can check out all of those vlogs. That was actually how I started my channel, so they're all filmed on my phone. They're a little old-fashioned, but they are iconic because they brought me all of this. And I also posted my TEAS video, my acceptance video, and the reaction is in there. In my acceptance video, I also talked a lot more about how I chose UTMB and why I did my application the way that I did. So if you're interested in learning more about my thought process in that, you can check out that video as well. So that is all I have for you guys today. I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you stay safe and healthy. Bye!